In this video, I'll be ranking every single advanced tower in Tower Defense Simulator. Because of how important advanced towers are in this game, you have some of the most used towers in this game, such as Commander and DJ, which are both advanced towers. I believe it's a good time to rank every single one of them, and yeah, let's get into the video. We will be going from the weakest towers up to the strongest towers, starting from Minion Gunner being the weakest advanced tower. It's not a bad tower, but it just does not have a lot of strength for its job. It has no limit, which may sound like a good thing, but it isn't because of how it takes up a lot of space, and higher player counts also lower the limit, which lowers the max potential you can get from Minion Gunner compared to other DPS towers, which they still become even better in multiplayer. It also has mediocre range, having only 15 range at max, which is terrible for its no limit. It also doesn't help the fact that it doesn't even have stun immunity, which is why I am ranking Minion Gunner in the C tier. Man, I should really make a why Minion Gunner is trash part 2. Next tower up here is Cowboy. Like Minion Gunner, it's not a bad tower, but it just outclassed like crazy. It's better than normal Minion Gunner because at least it has a purpose, being a cash producing tower with DPS. While this might sound like a good thing, but it isn't great in multiplayer, being just a waste of a slot, because other towers will also be shooting, giving Cowboy less time to produce cash. Because of how Cowboy is only good for a solo casual player, and not really in other situations like multiplayer, grinding, or in harder game modes, I will be ranking this tower in the C tier. Now that we are done with the C tier towers, we are starting to go to towers that are actually kinda good and not just alright of a tower. Warden is generally a good tower, having stun immunity, stalling capabilities, and fairly high DPS, having 170 DPS at max level. So why is this tower only at B tier? Well, Warden has a very low range, having only 7 at max, making it very unreliable because of how it has a 15 limit. It also doesn't help the fact that it has only 4 levels for a melee tower, making like the price gaps extremely high. It doesn't really compensate that much by having good cost efficiency compared to towers like Brawler that can go around the entire map and has way better cost efficiency, and Sledger that can hit multiple enemies, making it very cost efficient. This is why Warden is only B tier since it's still pretty good for tower, being meta in Fallen, Molten, and Pizza Party speedruns because of how strong its hit detection is. Now, we are starting to see the great towers, which are pretty much meta, but you won't use in every situation. The first tower up is Turret. Now, Turret is a very good tower when you have a bunch of support towers, which you want are Medic, Commander, DJ, and Mercenary base. And once you get these towers, then Turret is one of the best DPS towers in squads, and maybe even trios, but that's about it. It's not good in the earlier levels, and needs a bunch of support to be the best, which is why it's staying at A tier. Pursuit has also gotten a rework, and is pretty much better than Turret in almost every single way possible, aside from cheap hit detection. Electroshocker is the second best stalling tower in the game, but overall the best, due to how it can deal a lot of DPS. With 8 max targets, it can deal 800 damage every 2.5 seconds consistently for the price of 20,000. It's also great in the early game, being meta in hardcore speedruns and generally in Fallen. Electroshocker can also melt enemies' defense by around 20%. However, the only issue I have is that I wouldn't be using Electroshockers in solos and duos, as I don't have much tower slots, but I would definitely be using it most of the time in trios and quads, which is why Electroshocker is in the A tier. The second and last tower in A tier is the Mercenary base. Now, this tower is great for both DPS and support, giving 20% damage buff and can be great for late game DPS now, even in quads, because you can place 3 of them instead of 1. If you're playing on a good map, then Mercenary base will help you a lot for the entire game with Riflemen and Grenadiers. Riot Guards are great for the final bosses and supporting you for the late game. However, the only thing stopping it from being S tier is how it can be reliant on some maps, and Mercenary base can be a little slow to use. Other than that, this tower is very good, and I've seen myself use it in a lot of scenarios, which is why it's in the A tier. The last tower in the A tier is the Gatling gun. Now in my older videos, I did say that Gatling was not as good as some of the A tier DPS towers, but it did get a buff from level 3 to 6, which pretty much makes it a lot better than most other DPS towers. Again, it's now 750 DPS single target, which can be about 1800 when hitting 3 targets. It's also very cost efficient at the same time, which is the reason why you can even beat Infernal Abyss hardcore. The only problem with Gatling is how you have to rely on the FPS game a lot, unlike another tower where you don't really need to, which is why it's still in the A tier. Now, we are starting to get to the best towers. Mortar is easily one of the best towers in the game because how amazing it is against crowds. It is easily a first pick if you're playing Pizza Party. It's great in most other game modes as well due to the spammier nature of it. Even though it got a nerf, it's still very good as it's still great for the entire game, and that's why it's in the deserved spot of S tier. The second best DPS tower is Ranger. It has global range, high DPS, stun immunity. What else can you be asking for? It's generally good in pretty much every scenario except for some speedruns. Just don't use Ranger as your only defense tower in the mid game, but it's still in the S tier category, of course, because of how the amount of strengths it has in the late game. Alright, the best DPS tower is easily the Pursuit. It's really great for the same reasons as Ranger, except it's way better at crowd control, it's more cost efficient, it has higher DPS, and it's cheaper. It even has all detection at max. Not sure why it has that, but sure. It's used in every scenario, and it's just great overall, and it's the fourth best tower in the entire game, and is in the S tier category. The second tower that is the best in advanced is easily DJ. It's fairly cheap, it gives damage buff, range buff, and even discount to towers for only one tower slot. It can also melt enemies' defense by 25% with a red track, and slow down enemies with the purple track. This tower has no real weaknesses and it's pretty self-explanatory why this tower is easily in the S tier. Alright, the best tower in advanced, and the best tower in the entire game is the Commander. It boosts tower's fire rate by 50%, giving yourself pretty much 50% more DPS in the late game, aside from some reload towers. It is also useful in the mid game, while level 2 being fairly cheap and giving 30% fire rate buff. It even has APCs if you want extra DPS. Although I don't really like the low range, but the fire rate buff is really good, and that is why Commander is the best tower in the entire game. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments. Subscribe to my channel and like the video as it makes me feel a lot better. And yeah, if you want to see next time, with the Why Minigator Sucks Part 2 upcoming.